Hey, everybody, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York but love the Cubs a little bit less every day. I'm Adam Amawala. I'm one of them. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey. Kevin, how you doing, man?
I'm good, and I agree with the sense this week it's been a tough week to love, even though I do love all the Cubs individually, almost all of them, not all of their wives. But a lot of the Cubs themselves in particular, we both love. But yeah, it's been a real shit week of baseball watching with a couple of bright spots yesterday, I guess.
Agreed. So let's start there. First of all, as always, follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to make some prop bets on whether or not the Cubs will score more than 5 runs in a game all season, you can do that at Thrive Fantasy and use promo code Away Games for a free $20 credit with your first deposit of $20 or more. But let's start with the positive, shall we? Because there's going to be a lot of negative energy in the Cubs podcast and Cubs Twitter land this week. Let's start with our boy, your boy, Justin motherfucking Steele. Throwing some pretty nifty looking stuff yesterday. Congrats to Justin Steele on his MLB debut. Jackie Bradley Jr. thought he was going to get hit in the ribs and spun out on a strike, and I loved it.
It was great, and I'm glad you flagged Pitching Ninja on that. Is really good because Steele, we've heard about Steele's crazy high spin slider, but just how his career has timed out, and that he was basically on the verge of being in the majors last year, going into last year, and then the year was cut in half, and then he got called up. And then he didn't get into a game after he was called up. And so he's just running.
Yeah, he got Moonlight Grammed before a blowout where he definitely would have pitched.
Absolutely. Yes. And we've heard about like the stuff, the high spin stuff, but we haven't really gotten a chance to see Justin Steele until last night. And yeah, the slider, shout out to one of the better follows in Cubs Twitter, Full Count Tommy, who pointed out that the spin rate on Steele's slider yesterday was very Brad Hand-esque. The vertical movement,
I like that.
Yeah, the vertical movement and horizontal movement were both, I mean, nearing 100% greater than the average spin on those pitches. So Steele can just spin that ball in a way that almost no one can. And he's a lefty who gets. Did you see what the top velocity he hit yesterday was?
I think I want to say 95, 96.
Yeah, and that is where we know he sits typically. And even as a starter in the minors 2 years ago, he was hitting 95, 96 consistently. So, I mean, we've said this about how the Cubs bullpen, of all the things that are going wrong right now, the bullpen's been pretty good. And you can make almost 2 interesting bullpens out of the arms they have. And Steele was one who got to make his major league debut yesterday. And
and I mean he got into a little bit of trouble in part because of the fact that Javi threw a ball to first 300 feet in the air. But he seemed very calm, and that means something, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. Javi threw a ball into Lake Michigan, which is difficult considering the construction of the stadium there. But
thank God for the extended netting. Imagine sitting in the loge and getting hit with the ball from a shortstop.
Yeah, just it was a more or less routine grounder. I looked down at my nachos, and what do you know, a foul ball off an arm. But yeah, I think we saw that Justin Steele brings real swing and miss stuff. Like, he can really confuse people. And between what he's bringing from the left side, Rex Brothers, who's been good and has nasty stuff, and then Brad Wick, who's one of the trio of relievers who were called up because of COVID protocol. There's some fun bullpen guys in here.
There are, yeah, and we've had Justin Steele on the show twice. He's a very, very nice guy and very down to earth. And occasionally, and I don't know if you do this as well, I'll DM him about something in his Instagram story. He's always very responsive. And I did make him promise at one time that he wouldn't big time us once he got to the bigs. And I can confirm, I'm not going to post any screenshots, but I can confirm that Justin Steele has not big timed us yet. And I do have to quote one thing that he said to me. I said, I just wish they would have let you take that at bat after your outing. And he said, and I quote, "I would have swang it." And you're damn right he would have.
That's great. He would have gone up, taken cuts. And I mean,
He can
people
rake.
people were responding. So that's on the downside is that the Cubs have been historically bad offensively this year. I saw a stat that they over this 10-game stretch, the Cubs haven't had this few an amount of hits since 1901. And that's not talking about opening 10 game sets. That's literally any 10-game stretch. The Cubs have never had a hit total lower than this since 7 years before the last World Series, before 2016. So that's how bad the offense has been. And people were jokingly responding, like, oh, but can Steele hit? And we have the video clip, and you can check it out on YouTube. We posted it.
Yeah.
He talks about his exit velo numbers, rocking around a 102 max. As he pointed out, this was batting practice. This was not live game situation. But I
mean, sometimes people throw around the phrase historically bad.
Mm-hmm.
The Cubs are literally historically bad offensively right now.
The Cubs have not been this bad offensively since 7 years before the Model T Ford was invented. I mean, we're talking they've been the last time they were this bad offensively, it was 27 years before sliced bread, and that's not a joke. That is when people say the best thing since sliced bread, that was 1928. That was when they did it. So this is more rare than seeing a Cubs World Series was.
I don't know how, but I do feel like this is Chili Davis's fault.
They will find a way to blame Chili Davis. And that's another thing people, obviously, I think you setting the bar a couple games into the season, you're pointing out, like, they haven't gotten over 5 yet. And still, so I feel like we have to do something special when they do finally break the 5-run barrier you have set for them.
I don't know what it's going to be, but whatever it is, it's got to be big, because it might not happen until July. So here's the thing. All right, let me try to put my "I'm always positive about this team" spin on this. Last year the Cubs started out 13-3, and they were not that good. And I think we knew they weren't that good. And then they proved that they weren't, because they played basically under 500 or like at 500 ball for the rest of the year and kind of whimpered out of the playoffs. I do not think this team is this bad. Do I think that this team, as it's currently constructed, could make any noise even if they somehow got to the playoffs? Realistically, I don't think so. But I do not think they are this bad.
Yeah, I think they cannot be this bad, and it's hard to parse what is luck, what is small sample, and what is consistent problems with this group of players and with this team and whatever their hitting infrastructure is, because a lot of the bad stuff we're seeing right now was similar to what the bad stuff was last year, which last year you sort of write off, but that you have last year, then you have an off season, and then you come right back in, and it's still, the Cubs are at right now, if the season ended today, would have the lowest contact rate on swings in history. I mean, I don't know what else you can say about that. We've had swing and miss problems for years. Kyle Schwarber, an extremely high swing and miss guy with a very high ceiling, is gone. We brought in Jock Peterson, who theoretically makes a little more contact than Kyle does, and still, it's swinging and missing all the time. And as Wilson Contreras said, it seems like they're gearing up for fastballs and not getting fastballs, or vice versa. And it does just seem, watching these games day to day, it seems like there's just like a lot of guessing going on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a good sign if the lone bright spot offensively this season is Chris Bryant, and even he's only hitting 265.
Yeah,
and I realize batting practice is not everything, or batting average. Batting practice might be everything, but batting average is not everything. And when you look at I'm looking at the Cubs averages right now, you have KB at 265, and the only player who's even close to that is Marisnick hitting 300 on 3 for 10, and everybody else is like around or below the Mendoza line.
Yeah, and I think Chris Bryant has been encouraging, because his OPS, I believe, is over 900 right now. So Chris Bryant is
Yeah, it's over 1,000 actually.
over 1,000.
After
Yeah.
last night. Yeah.
That's great. That's star level. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, as you say, if we're talking straight up average contact stuff down in the 260s is like fine. And my God, if this whole team was at 260, we'd be thrilled. But
Yeah.
I think the most encouraging thing with Bryant is seeing the power come back. And it's the weird power because when Chris Bryant hits home runs, it doesn't look as Greg Huss of the Growing Cubs podcast would say, it doesn't look like a full tallywhack. I wouldn't say he's never been a huge exit velo guy, but he gets that sort of looping swing, and it seems like he just has figured out a way to get a certain amount of surprising carry on the ball. And it's really encouraging that he is in that zone right now in a way that we haven't seen since 2019, I guess. So that's great. But as you say, yeah, you're seeing Javi, the power's there a little bit. He had a double last night. He's got a few homers, but I mean, looks, and this is part of the package of Javi, I guess, but just can look completely lost otherwise too. Yeah, I mean, it's
look, unless all of these guys magically forgot how to play baseball. Let me throw you some names and numbers. All right, David Bodie, Ian Happ, Jason Hayward, Jock Peterson, Anthony Rizzo, and then Duffy and Sogard, who don't play as much. But those 7 guys, right? Take a stab at what the best batting average is of those 7 players.
I'm gonna, God, I would almost say Sogard at 208. I'll say.
Of those 7 players, the best batting average is Jason Hayward hitting 152.
Oh my God! Yeah, I thought
Bodie's hitting 087, Hap 143, Jock 129, Rizzo 118, Duffy 125, Sogard 133.
Man, yeah, that's a bummer of a list, and it really, I mean,
and that can't continue. It statistically can't continue.
No, it can't. But it can't, and that's good. But it also doesn't excuse what has been an absolutely horrible job by the offense to this point. And
hashtag extend no one.
Yes, which we are not team extend no one. I am of the same opinions of the extensions that I was before. And the thing is, you look at the guys, the 3 main extension candidates who were on their last year here with Rizzo, Javi, and Chris Bryant. And I mean, Chris Bryant's the one who's playing the best and probably therefore would be the least likely to get extended, out of those 3 guys, which is frustrating. But I mean, at some point, so the negativity around the team can definitely be a toxic thing when you're reading Twitter and talking about it. You don't want to be negative all the time. But also, and Patrick Mooney wrote a good piece in The Athletic about this too. Like, this isn't, we're in a season where you have to make the decision which way to go earlier.
Yeah.
So we're now 1/16 of the way through the year. We've played 1 football game, basically, if it was a football season. You've played 1, and you scored negative 12 points. So I mean, like, that sucks. Game 1 sucked. And it sucks because it sucks in the same way it sucked last year when it was bad. And it's just really frustrating to see no change incrementally, in any way. And you look at the underlying numbers, and there's a guy like Ian Happ who is doing most of the right stuff. He's not swinging a ton of bad stuff. He's just hitting into bad luck right now. And the Cubs' BABIP is crazy bad. Batting average on balls in play would be historical. It would be the record by a lot all time. So yeah, it's going to come back, but man, it needs to come back soon.
Yes, and the thing that's really strange to me, and I realize, we're now 5 years removed from the World Series team, and there's, I don't know the exact number, but 7, 8 guys who are here from that team. But the Cubs this year and the last few years have looked like a team that is constantly pressing, and I don't understand where that comes from when you've already done the thing. Like, they feel like how I would imagine, like, the Indians probably felt the last few years. They're like, fuck, we were so close, and, like, we got to get over the hump, and we're like, we got to do it. You would think that a team that actually did the thing and won the World Series and made all of our dreams came true, at least of those guys who are still here, would play fairly loose. And there doesn't seem to... It's a weird thing because I do feel like the team last year, like emotionally, was loose. Like there was a lot of talk about like, oh, they're having fun and they're like leaning into the whole like it feels like they're in little league again and they're cheering
Hmm.
each other on and there's like a good vibe in the clubhouse. And I'm not saying that's not the case now, but I just like I can't my brain can't logically compute like why it is that this is happening. And I want to believe that it's impermanent.
It has to be. It sucks that the first half of this month's schedule was much easier than the second half is. Because the Cubs are sitting here with a losing record when they've had two series against the Pirates who aren't even trying to win, you know?
Yeah.
And then the Mets are coming up, the Braves are coming up, the Dodgers are coming up, playing Milwaukee right now. Those are teams that you expect to do a decent amount of losing to. And baseball's weird. If this lineup of players just starts hitting like their career averages, the team is suddenly winning more than they're losing very quickly, no matter who the opposition is. And
Because the
that's
pitching's been reasonably good. It's not been great, but it's,
Yeah, I think pitching wise. Also, let's just throw out this news if people don't know. Craig Driver, first base coach, and Chris Young, bullpen coach, both tested positive for COVID.
ugh,
Dan Winkler, Jason Adam, and Brandon Workman are now on the COVID IL, which has no time limit. So that means they can come back quicker than 10 days. They can be on that IL much longer too. So it's not the COVID IL is flexible, and that doesn't mean they've tested positive. It could mean that, but it just means they were at least in close contact with people who tested positive. And
yeah,
that led to the calling up of Justin Steele, Brad Wick, and our friend Pedro Strop, who's now in the bullpen too. So that's all fun stuff. But bullpen wise, pretty much everyone's been pretty good. Dylan Maples has come in and been very good. Craig
yeah.
Kimbrell is peak career Craig Kimbrell right now.
Kimbrell and KB have been the bright spots of this season early on.
Absolutely. And Jake Arrieta too. I mean, Arrieta
Hmm.
has been very good through both starts. And then, as you said, with the starting rotation, it's been weird because outside of Arrieta, it's been a lot of like one game on, one game off. You know. Um,
Right. Davies and Williams both looked really good. Their first games, not so much their second games. Alzolay looked much, 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 much better last night. Unfortunately, didn't get helped by Chafin, but
who had been
Chafin's
great to
also
that
been
point.
very good. Yeah, exactly. Like everybody's going to have a clunker. Like, and also, are you really going to give anybody on the pitching staff that hard of a time when they're getting one run of run support every game?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. We saw what Trevor Williams he looked really good carrying that no hitter deep in his Wrigley debut, and then it wasn't great in Pittsburgh. But I'm not too worried about Trevor Williams and Zach
Hmm.
Davies is not. I mean, that was literally the worst start of his career, so that sucks. But he looked good before that. He had a great year last year. I'm not that worried about him either. Everything we see from
Well, and Davies is like Hendricks and like Mills, where like he's not going to have the stuff that's going to bail him out if he's not locating, and so when he doesn't locate well, he's going to struggle.
every once in a while, there's just going to be a game like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But you look at the starting between the starting rotation between the bullpen. I think you have to feel pretty good about that. The defense is good. Javi's made a couple of uncharacteristic errors over this week, but I mean he's also made great plays no one else would make. I mean we just know what the problem is here. You know, it's just hitting.
yeah. Well, it's so early in the season, but I guess what my mind starts to go to is like, okay, at what point do they start actively looking to trade people earlier than expected if there are a few guys playing and pitching well and the rest of the team is just not putting it together? Because we already knew, and we had talked about this, that there might be one of those tough things where like the Cubs could be 500 at the trade deadline, but like 3 games out of first because the division is shitty. And they would have had to decide, like, do we really keep this group together for what we know is not going to be a deep playoff run? But it seems to me that Cubs fans, and I can't speak for you, are coming around to accepting that like it might not be such a terrible idea if things continue this way, or not quite this bad, but if this team is 500 or 10 games under 500 at the deadline, it would be very hard as a fan to be like, well, how dare you trade anybody?
Yeah, and I think the thing with that is it's just gonna whoever you trade, the only guy I really see as a significant trade piece in this moment that could get you what people like you and I would consider an exciting prospect back is Craig Kimbrell. So Craig Kimbrell is someone who, I mean, a dominating shutdown closer, one of the best closers of all time. He has one of my favorite stats of any pitcher, where he has more saves than hits allowed in his career.
That's incredible.
It's crazy. Literally, over his career, Craig Kimbrell giving up a hit is less common than him getting a whole ass save. So, I mean, and we saw how good he could be. That Pittsburgh game was so exciting when Dan Winkler came in, walked everybody, and then Kimbrell comes in, gets out of a bases loaded jam immediately and finishes off almost a full 2-inning save, 1 2/3 inning save,
which he had never done in the regular season.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a piece where you think a contending team, a team that wants to win the World Series, could be making something resembling the Aroldis Chapman trade, right? Where the Cubs give up Gleyber Torres in that trade. And that's not to say you would necessarily get a Gleyber, but something in that realm of possibility could happen. But, I mean, you look at the rest of the Cubs right now, and then KB, Javi, Rizzo, what are you getting for these guys that would be worth it? And again, we're
right now, nothing. 10 games into the season. Yeah.
Yeah, we're 1/16 into the season, so you're not really making these calls yet. But yeah, I mean, I think we can look back to when Theo said the offense broke, and that he said that was at the end of the 2018 season, right? Where the Cubs were extremely good, 95 wins. The Brewers basically had to go undefeated in September, and they just did. And then the Cubs lost back-to-back one-game playoffs, and that sucked. But it's, it was an elite team for most of that year. But they identified the way the offense broke then, and in that following year, not 2018, you have a 95-win team, you got to push that. You got to go all the way with that. But the next year was the year probably to start making big moves to actually get some resources back. And this year, it's just a tough in between because you're just not getting that much in resources back from almost any of these guys, except, like I said, maybe a Craig Kimbrell.
Right. Well, and look, I'm not going to sit here and say that there is any logical reason to be optimistic about this team given what we've seen. But let's not forget that in 2019, the Cubs started out, 1-6? And it was like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Like, what are we going to do? And then until they collapsed at the end, they played pretty good baseball for most of that year. So at the very least, I would caution patience for anybody, ourselves included, who's like, oh, well, I guess it's over. And like, this was fun, but time for the rebuild and whatever. It's been 10 games. We sat here a week ago talking positively about a 3-1 team, saying, oh, well, you'd love to see them at 7-3 a week from now. And now here we are. And it does feel like the sky is falling because the Pirates do suck. And the Brewers, I think, are at best like a 500 team. But let's give it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, if we're sitting here at the end of June or the end of May and the Cubs are still some version of what we've seen in the first 10 games, then yeah, at a certain point, what you're seeing is what they are. But like, let's at least give it a little time, because there is going to come a moment, and it's probably going to frustrate us, where they're going to just score 15 runs and we're going to be like, where the fuck was that this whole time?
Right. And you can see a world where these guys all get going at the same time and it gets real good. And look, spring training numbers don't count. They don't count for good reasons. You're not facing all major league caliber opponents, but you're facing people who are major leaguers and then borderline major leaguers who are trying to get people out. And in spring training, the Cubs bats were working. I mean, it's not like they've completely forgotten how to hit, but something is broken in the approach and straight up luck too. But at some point, you got to figure out a way to get past that luck. And as we speak about luck, let me give you a couple numbers here. So David Bodie has the lowest. The numbers aren't good for Bodie. He's hitting under 100. He has the lowest strikeout rate among Cubs regulars, the lowest BABIP, the batting average on balls in play, but he has the second highest hard hit rate. The problem for Bodie right there is his launch angle is before yesterday's game, but was 0.1 degrees, is the worst, which is the worst on the team. And Bodie's a guy where you make a slight change in exit velocity or in launch angle, and extremely he's popping off.
Right.
And even Hayward's hard hit rate is high right now. His exit velocity of 91 plus is good, but we see if you're hammering the ball into the ground in front of you, it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
And to some degree, these are the hitters they have, but someone's got to figure out how to make a slight tweak in coaching, in instruction, and then with these players implementing it too. So yeah, but as you said, I think you don't really know where this team can go until you got to be at least a month in. It's going to be a couple weeks before we really get a vibe for what level we're finding here.
Right. I mean, it feels to me like that, like Rossi needs to take a page out of Madden's book and bring in some like zoo animals or some shit.
I mean, might as well, kind of, right? I mean,
a magician, perhaps an out of work comedian. That could be a good idea.
Perhaps too. Yeah. Bring us in. We won't do comedy. We'll literally just do this podcast.
So what's the deal with your batting averages?
Yeah.
Come on.
The ground is there. The fence is over there, pointed towards the fence. Yeah. Is the vaccine poison? This guy's wife knows what I'm talking about, as I point to Eric Sogard. Let's
oh man,
let's that too. So Eric, here's the thing. There's a little bit of a kerfluffle online over the last couple days. Mm-hmm. Kerfluffle is my word for when one of the players' wives is liking racist posts on the internet. Yeah. So that's Casey Sogard, who seems awful, I'll say, top to bottom. We've heard firsthand accounts that Eric Sogard is a nice guy in person, and that's all fine and good. Casey Sogard briefly deactivated her Twitter after she was liking posts she basically liked a tweet that said, if we shut down baseball games every time a black person is killed with the crime rate in Chicago, yada yada, we'd never play a game. So she liked that. That's Casey Sogard's responding to when a black man, an unarmed black man, is murdered by a cop. Casey Sogard, who's lived in Chicago for literally 2 weeks, is suddenly very concerned about crime rates in Chicago. So that popped up.
Well, that is something that John Oliver has popularized as whataboutism.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh, well, what about this?
Yes. And we know Casey Sogard is a real active anti-vaxxer too, so she's doing her thing that way. But this is a step beyond that, I think, too. And
she neither wants to save lives or protect them.
No. And of course she, followed up with a non-apology where she's just like, obviously this has been misconstrued. There was some miscommunication, and I just think there should be more love. And I would love it if Casey Sogard left town. I will say I have no time.
So you're not saying all wives matter?
God damn it, Adam. Good job. No, all wives don't matter. That is 100% true. So that's a little bit of a peek into the online world if you guys aren't as online, and if you're not, God bless you.
Yeah, first of all, congrats. I'm very jealous of you. But if you are online, just a quick PSA if you haven't figured it out. People can see what you like online. Whether you're married to a professional athlete or not, whether you have 10 followers or 10,000, people can see what you're doing.
It's a great point. And I think people don't know, but usually it's like older people who don't know that your likes show up on Twitter too.
If you're Paul Pierce, maybe you don't have to go live on Instagram. Maybe you just don't have to do that.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. Remember a couple years ago, didn't Wilson Contreras was liking some nothing bad, but he was liking some butts. He was liking some butts on Instagram.
My favorite story with that was Pablo Sandoval. Do you remember that?
Yes, he was liking butts during the game.
Yeah,
from the dugout.
He went to use the bathroom during the game and brought his phone with him, which God bless him, who wouldn't? But you're not supposed to.
Yes, exactly. And this goes if you're a Casey Sogard liking racist whataboutism on Twitter too. People can see that. So yeah, that's.
I seem to remember one of the people that the Cubs were considering, or they had rumored. It was rumored after Casper decided to go to the White Sox. One of the I forget what. Do you remember the name of the guy that the Cubs were considering? And then people were like, "Oh, he has liked some really bad things."
Chris Myers. Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
Myers, who's he's still tangentially involved with Marquee, and we might see him filling in at points during the year when Boog has responsibilities with ESPN. Speaking of bright spots, really like this announcing team. But
I thought I would miss Len, and I do miss Len, but I think that Boog has like done a great job of immediately making everybody feel comfortable. And I also I like that he's very honest about things that are a problem in the game. Like, I don't know if you were watching on Sunday when there was that weird replay situation with the Contreras slide, but he was kind of, I mean, he was very blunt about like, this is something in baseball that is not okay, that we just go back to the game and there's no explanation for the viewers or the people in the stands about what the hell just happened.
Boog has talked about that. He talked about that in spring training a little bit too, where he has been a big fan of miking up the home plate ump or the crew chief to explain what happens on plays like this. And they have to do it in every other sport, basically. But Major League Baseball umpires are not known for their transparency in any part of the game, of the world. They never have to face the press. They never have to they never have to face the consequences of their own performance. Angel Hernandez, I mean, so this is obviously maybe not something that they would be that into, but yeah, Boog has been on that point, and I very much also, as you say, appreciate that he articulates that. And it would be a new thing to do, but Boog also is a pretty modern baseball fan too. And I mean, yeah, insane that over the past year, over the past like year and a half of baseball, the Cubs have lost Theo Epstein, Joe Madden, Len Casper. I mean, and then players too. It's
those are some biblical losses.
Those are biblical losses, but I think having Boog here, it's like, yeah, I would sign Boog to a lifetime deal tomorrow. I think it's been
he's great. Yeah, and I mean, it is such a good point because like, imagine if you were watching an NFL game and the refs conferred and then they just moved the ball 10 yards backwards and no one said anything about it. You'd be like, well, I would love to know why that happened.
Yeah,
I'm gonna assume it was a hold, but I can't be sure.
It's to me, it seems like no downside. And I bet there are some umpires who would also agree that it's better that way. It's better to be able to explain these things, like, and so fans aren't confused by it. Seems great.
But,
so, yeah.
We've seen already this season that there are issues not only with umpiring, but with replay. I mean, there was that bizarre Conforto situation where a strike hit him in the elbow because he leaned into it, and that was incorrectly called. And perhaps that's why umpires don't want to explain things, because they might have to be defending something that they know is wrong.
Yeah, and at least in that case, I believe Ron Culpa did come out and say that he made the wrong call afterwards.
At least he was culpable with a K.
Oh, but Adam is just on
I came
fire.
To play today.
You did. You're the Cubs pitching staff. I'm the Cubs offense. You're bringing a sharpness to the wordplay game. Yeah, he at least was admitting afterwards it has to be very frustrating for him to be able to like see it, but not on the replay, but not do anything about it.
Right.
Yeah, that sucks. So yeah, in terms of just around baseball in general, outside of the Cubs, we also had Trevor Bauer had some balls taken out of play for suspected sticky substances, which Bauer's not the only pitcher to have those taken out. But Bauer also was a guy who who made a big stink about pitchers increasing their spin rate by a certain amount in a short period of time. He figured it out because he is self-proclaimed one of the most scientific players in baseball. And years ago, he
likes drones. He must be smart.
Exactly. He's got to be. He's a big Elon Musk guy. Loves all that guy's stuff. But he then increased his spin rate by exactly that amount, which, by the way, I believe the reporter who found that out was Jordan Bastian when he was working in Cleveland,
Nice.
But is now with the Cubs. And Bauer told Bryant Gumbel on HBO that he wouldn't use substances because he, quote, has morals. Anyway, all this is to say,
well, that's patently untrue.
Yes, it's badly untrue. And this is all to say, Mr. Outspoken Trevor Bauer has expressed shock, and he's playing the victim about having these balls looked into. But he still hasn't addressed whether he's actually using anything or not, because he won't, because he's a coward. So
Look, I mean, whoever smelt it dealt it. You know, we've known this rule since we were children.
Yes.
Sometimes the person who's most outspoken about somebody else doing something wrong is the one who's trying to divert attention away from their own misdeeds.
Mr. Smelt It. Trevor Bauer is only smelting it all the time. So that
shout out to Joe Musgrove. That's a pitcher I like who did a great thing. He's on my fantasy team, even though I lost in our league, but I got 47 points from that game just from Joe Musgrove.
I mean, great stuff. It was the first no-hitter in San Diego franchise history, so now every franchise has thrown a no-no. And you know what catcher has caught the last two no-hitters in Major League Baseball? Victor Caratini has caught two in a row. Our guy
Coincidence?
Coincidence? I'm going to say slightly no. He's a
good catcher.
Yeah, he's very good. And I will say, just mentioning that bit of trivia, one thing I do as a side gig sometimes, HQ trivia is a thing on phones, and it's an app. You play live trivia for real money. I write their sports game, and I wrote a question where the answer was Justin Turner. It was basically like which player's base running gaffe cost his teammate a home run. And Justin Turner ran backwards past Cody Bellinger after Bellinger hit one over the fence. And this is on opening day. And that was 2 games in a row that Turner had pretty big gaffes, because the previous one was his COVID situation, running around with the mask around his chin after he tested positive on the last World Series game. And Justin, speaking of sports wives, Justin Turner's wife tweeted at HQ that this was the last time she's playing HQ trivia, and that she's been a loyal HQer since 2017.
What a loss for HQ. How
so we lost it, yes. And I think it was a little bit tongue in cheek, but yeah. So Mrs. Turner, I'm sorry that factual question was a bummer to come across. Yeah.
That's great. You got anything else?
No, that's I think that's all my stuff for the news and notes at the end here. And then
I'll tell you what I'm not going to do is look at the Cubs schedule and tell you how I think they're going to do the next week, because that did not go well.
Let's take that off. We can look at the schedule and just say who's coming up,
Well, we've got 2 more at Milwaukee. We're recording this on Tuesday, so tonight and tomorrow afternoon. And then we have 3 versus Atlanta. And I guess we'll have talked before then, but we got a homestand against Atlanta, New York, and Milwaukee. But by the next time we talk, 2 more against Milwaukee, and then 3 against the Braves, who are a very good team. But also would not surprise me if the Cubs decide that they're good again.
Absolutely not. And I hope they do. And I will actually be at one of those games. I'll be going to my first game. So I'm going to the game this Sunday after
it's a Sunday night game, right?
Yeah. So that should be a big one. And I'm going to go with my brother, his wife, and my mom. So that'll be fun, and it'll be nice to hear that. Nice to see Wrigley Field again, even if it's going to be a very, very tough game against Atlanta. But yeah, I'll be flying straight from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Chicago for that game.
Some of you may remember Kevin's mom from our Mother's Day episode, during which she was stuck in a wind tunnel.
Just the windiest. My mom, it was really nice of my mom on Mother's Day to call us straight from the center of a tornado, and we appreciated it. And
we love you, Ev. I think you probably listen. We love you very much. I had to give you a hard time.
Yes, I love my mom very much too. And my mom does not drink much at all. We're very different that way. My mom will have like a Riesling, maybe, a white Zim.
Yeah. Kevin's nice and drunk. His mom is just nice. Period.
Yes.
Full stop.
Very much so. But the most drunk I've seen my mom was, I believe, after 2 in recent history, was 2 Moscatos heading to Wrigley. And my mom was just absolutely on one, so I'm looking forward to that again. I remember she was just boozy and talkative, and she told me out of the blue, "You're better than Prince William," and I don't know in what way she was talking. I don't know why I think it was I don't know why we were being compared, but I'm looking forward to that level of Moscato boozy from my
I
mom.
gotta tell you, I think a little pregame with Ev at Nice Lounge might be in order.
Hell yeah! So looking forward to that. Anything else for you, Adam? Before we wrap up, anything you're looking forward to this week?
No, not particularly, but I'm looking forward to some better Cubs performances and to turning this thing around. Look, 4-6 is not great. It's also not 0-10. Let's get some W's on the board. Get back above 500, because I got to tell you, as bad as this team has hit, they could be worse than 4-6.
Absolutely. There's been good elements here, and like you said, a couple years ago, starting 1-7. It's not that. It's better than that, and there's plenty of time to come out of this, but it should start this week. Let's do it now.
So, in conclusion, thanks for listening. Spend your money at Thrive Fantasy. Get your vaccine. Black Lives Matter. We'll see you next week.
Great
that was for
rundown.
Casey if she listens.
Yes, at Away Games Pod.